Okay, so this is not turning into a football channel, at least not yet. But I did do a predictions video for Euro 2016, so I'm going to do one for Euro 2020. Because I think I did quite well last time, all things considered. Okay, I did predict England to win the thing, and they did win one sodding game. But, you know, I think I've got a good defence, which is more than England had. How was I supposed to know that the English getting their rear end handed to them by Vikings was still a thing? I mean, and let's be fair to Iceland, they lit up that tournament. I mean, they didn't give us the great underdog victory that Greece did, but at least we got the clap. Could have phrased that better. Look, in fairness, I did correctly predict that France were going to be the runners-up. Unfortunately, I did also publicly criticise Cristiano Ronaldo and make the point that Portugal had never won anything. So there's that. But I think you take that away and I don't get laughed out of Aberdeen for predicting England to beat France in the final. Because fast forward 5 years and what is the favourite for the straight forecast? Thank you. See, turns out my prediction wasn't actually that bad, it was just 5 years ahead of its time. So I'm going to spoil the ending for you, for those of you who don't want to watch through several minutes of a complete amateur doing worse predictions than this guy. I'm going to predict the same thing that I predicted last time. England are going to beat France in the final, Italy are going to do really well. Now you don't have to watch to the end of the video. I totally don't have this YouTube thing figured out, do I? But okay, if you want to know how I got to such an insane conclusion, you might as well stick around. Group A. It's hard to see past anything other than Italy topping the group. They are the best team, they're on a run, and they have home advantage. By the way, so-and-so has home advantage, something you're going to be hearing a lot of in the group stages because of the ridiculous format of this tournament. And now I'll move on to Wales, the British interest, the team in this group that I want to do really well. So if I want them to do really well, I should do the best thing I can possibly do for them and predict them to come absolute bottom. I underestimated them in 2016 and they went on to the semi-finals, only getting knocked out by the eventual winners. So, looks like you're going to do really well this time, guys! Seriously though, the other two teams in this group are Turkey and Switzerland. Switzerland have been solid for years, they know how to compete at the top level now, they're not the team that Scotland beat in Euro 96. As for Turkey, they are vastly underrated, I think, and that's why in good conscience I can't say that Wales will come anything other than bottom. Turkey probably second because they don't have to bounce back and forth between Rome and Baku. B is for Belgium. That's where all the eyes are on. This is the team that everybody expects to do well, apart from anyone that knows what they're talking about. Don't get me wrong, Belgium have some great players in their ranks, and they really should have it in them to go all the way, but they have shown that they are perennial underachievers. They will stick around long enough to show us exactly what they can do, and they will have us half convinced that they're going to go all the way before getting knocked out in the quarterfinals by Italy. They are good enough to win the group though. I'd still have to rate them ahead of Denmark. Wouldn't surprise me if Denmark came first, especially with home advantage, but I think the smart money is still saying that Belgium are going to top this group. Russia third, Finland fourth. Group C. Well, the Netherlands certainly have the best players, and guess what? They also have home advantage. So I'd be completely nuts to predict anything other than Netherlands in first place, right? Except that I can't. I just can't do it. You can't have a manager that bad and predict any team to get first place with that. So I'm going to have to give it to Austria. If I'm not to say that Netherlands are going to be first, then I'm probably not to even say they'll be second, because they either do really well or really poorly at tournaments. There's no in between with the Netherlands. So saying they'll be second is a ridiculous bet, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick with that, and Ukraine might think that they are stronger than North Macedonia, but I'm going to have North Macedonia to pip Ukraine into third place, much like Northern Ireland did 5 years ago. Group E. Wait a minute, Alistair, what happened to Group D? Well, I've got some fiery opinions on Group D, so I'm going to save that till later if that's alright with you. If it's not alright with you, don't know what I can do for you. Skip, I guess. But in Group E, Spain are going to win. I expect. As does anyone in their right minds. They could underachieve, of course they could. But it's very difficult to predict that ahead of time, so I think I have to go with Spain in first place. Second place, Sweden. Yeah, they're going to be the surprise package of this tournament. Ibrahimovic probably going to do better than expected, or he'll be hopeless, but Sweden will still somehow pull it out of the bag, with defensive solidity being a major factor in that. Poland, on the other hand, really good team, really good at underachieving on the big stage. Let's put them in third place with Slovakia fourth. Group F. Yeah, Alistair, you totally don't get this YouTube runtime thing at all, do you? It's the group of death. Last, you could have built up to that, instead you have to go trawling back to Group D in a minute, but let's deal with the group of death first. France, first place. And I think Portugal are better than Germany, but Germany for second place. Why? You guessed it, home advantage. Also, Portugal, I think they can do well in the tournament. They've obviously proven that in the previous one, but they also like to start slowly, from what I can gather. They don't do too much in the group stages. They save themselves, they get themselves through, so probably qualifying in third place again, with Germany getting second before getting smacked by England in the second round. The group stages. Now, I'm not going to do a drum roll for this because you already know where I think it's going to end up. England are going to beat France in the final. I've even already said that England will beat Germany in the round of 16. And that's because it shouldn't be too much of a spoiler for me to say I think England are going to win Group D. Everybody expects that. After the Germany game, it's out to Rome for the only match that England are not going to have to play on home soil. That will be the quarter-final against Spain. Now, of course, Spain are a good side, but I just feel that England will have the measure of them. England will beat them, and then it will be back to Wembley for a semi-final against Denmark, of all teams. Yeah, I think Denmark are going to do quite well here, and they are going to get as far as the semi-final before England utilise home advantage yet again to get themselves into the final, where they will meet France. Now, France are a lot of people's favourites for this tournament, and maybe you're surprised that I think England can actually overcome them, but just like 5 years ago, I don't think France quite have it in them to go all the way. Get to the final, sure, but then losing at the final hurdle to England. Now, yes, France have a lot of good players in their squad. The problem is, French players know that too. And it will be a little bit surprising if their dressing room doesn't implode long before they even get to the final. I said Italy were going to have a good tournament. I think France are going to beat Italy in the semi-final, and the only reason I'm tipping France ahead of Italy is because Italy will have to knock out the Netherlands and then Belgium to get as far as the semi-final, whereas France will have a relatively easier route against Russia and then Sweden. So I do think France will, on raw quality alone, be able to coast to the final. But when they actually get there, it's all going to fall apart, and England are going to be lifting the trophy. Unless it all goes wrong for them before then. Now we go back to Group D. Group D. Obviously, there is only one team I'm actually interested in here. My own team, Scotland. It is a long time since we have qualified for the Euros, so we're hoping to do something now that we're here. Unfortunately, any expectation that we will do so is misplaced optimism. First up is the Czech Republic. And yes, I know that we have beaten them twice recently in the Nations League. But unfortunately, they are about to teach us a lesson in getting it done when it really matters. I expect the Czech Republic to win this game. We might snatch a draw, but anything more than a point and we will be really lucky. Although not as lucky as Andre Kudela is that he has been forced to sit this one out. We'll skip over the second game because we all know how that's going to go and I don't think I should be made to say it. And on to the third game against Croatia. This is why I think we're less likely to nick a point against Czech Republic as we previously might have. Because in the old format, we'd have needed to get something from the first two games to keep it interesting that we might actually sneak qualification from the group. Because we could still feasibly lose the first two games and still have a chance of qualifying in the third game, I think that's going to play against us and we'll have nothing going into the Croatia game. And then we'll have some sort of outside chance of pulling it out of the bag, only to completely mess up and it will be yet another glorious failure. Of course, that is going to play into Croatia's hands and they're going to get second. At least I think they're more likely to get second than the Czech Republic. And of course, we all know where England's going to finish. They have home advantage throughout. They've got, from their point of view, a relatively easy group to negotiate. And I've already told you what I think they're going to do in the group stages. So this tournament is England's to throw away. Can they throw it away? What do you think?
Booing the knee. The taking of the knee at football matches isn't the same as being against black people.
Yeah, sorry, I should have warned you. The predictions element of this video is now over, and if that's all you're here for, you are excused. You don't need to watch the rest of it, because I'm now moving on to a completely different topic, and most people would probably make a separate video for that. I'm not exactly a prolific YouTuber, so I'm just going to smash it on the end of this one. Obviously, I have no problem with England footballers taking the knee, although when they play against us, I kind of wish they'd do it during the match as opposed to before, because that's the only way we're going to win. But it's a complicated subject, and I think the best way to deal with it is to actually not say what I think the opposing side is. Let's have someone say it in their own words, what they think the issue is, and I'll respond to it.
A friendly game, but the response to players taking the knee, maybe less than friendly. See what you think.
Players will take the knee. There has been a mixed reaction of crowds from all the players.
I think calling it a mixed reaction, it's probably overwhelmingly a bit booey there.
No, I think it's fair to say a mixed reaction, given that the people that actually support the players taking the knee weren't going to be making any noise. If you'd actually played that clip just a little bit longer, you would have heard the fans applauding the players. So I'm not going to split hairs over that. I think mixed reaction is fine.
I think England's manager, Gareth Southgate, has totally got this all wrong in his response to this, pandering to those who care more about virtue signalling than they do actually identifying racial inequality and other forms of inequality in the country.
I've always thought it's an interesting criticism to level at someone that they are virtue signalling. As opposed to what? Indicating that they have no virtue? All they are doing is taking a stance against racism. I would have thought that was something that we could all get behind, but I understand that you have reasons that you're going to explain. Just wondering, I mean, if you call that virtue signalling, what would you call this, I wonder?
But I'm going to have to say it anyway. The slogan Black Lives Matter, I don't think I've not met anyone that disagrees with that. It's entirely laudable. And in a country like the United Kingdom, the vast majority agree with that statement.
Okay, so what's the problem then? If the vast majority of people in the country can get behind that idea, and that is the only idea that the players are trying to promote when they take the knee, which they are on the record as having clarified, then why would you boo them?
I did hear it. It's not something on behalf of our black players that I wanted to hear, because it feels as though it's a criticism of them. I think we have got a situation where some people seem to think it's a political stand that they don't agree with.
A political stand. Black Lives Matter, a political stand. Has Mr. Southgate not been watching the press, the media, the telly over the last year?
He probably has. He just hasn't been dredging talking points from whatever cesspit of misinformation you've been subscribing to. You said it yourself. Black Lives Matter, in of itself, is a statement that we can all get behind. And that's the be-all and end-all. That doesn't mean people that support Black Lives Matter aren't allowed to have political views, or that they even have the same political views. I'm a supporter of Aberdeen Football Club, but that does not mean Aberdeen Football Club itself has any political views, and it doesn't mean that other Aberdeen supporters have the same political views that I do.
A year on from the death of George Floyd, in which that act of subservience, the getting down on bended knee, which most of us would only do for Her Majesty the Queen, or your wife, but those things being inextricably linked with Black Lives Matter, the political movement, getting down on bended knee, that act of subservience.
I see what's happened here. You've taken a gesture that you are not used to seeing and applied it to the very limited situations in which you have seen it before. And you've completely missed that it's not the same thing. The footballers taking the knee is not subservient, because they are not showing deference to anyone. They are simply making a statement. They are saying to people of colour, we see you, we've heard what you've got to say, we're going to do what some would say, the bare minimum to raise awareness of it. And as you are categorically demonstrating, not everybody has got the message yet, which is why they continue to do it.
We enjoy absolutely fantastic race relations here, and I think actually the Marxist outfit and its divisive agenda, the BLM agenda, represents something entirely different.
Oh my god, how much can you get wrong in a single sentence? We enjoy fantastic race relations in this country? Really? Yeah, we're okay maybe compared to some other countries, but have you conducted a widespread survey of people of colour to reach that conclusion? Because I think you'll find that their experience is entirely different from yours. And as for Marxism and BLM, they're not the same thing. There are comparatively very few Marxists in the country. If you ask the people who were booing the taking of the knee, I'd be surprised if half of them could give an accurate definition of Marxism in the first place. It's not a very widespread concept. And the idea that millionaire footballers are secret Marxists is a bit of a stretch. I'm not going to deny that it is quite likely that most Marxists would support the Black Lives Matter movement. They've got a lot in common. But that does not make them inextricably linked.
Were you to ask most footy fans if they support giving equal opportunities to people of all races, regardless of physical immutable characteristics like skin colour, or sexuality, or gender, that you should provide all individuals with the legal, moral and political equality that we all deserve and our God-given rights, I think the answer would come as an emphatic yes. Ask them if they support BLM, it'll probably be an emphatic no, because we now know what they stand for.
Really? Because you've spent the last few minutes proving that you clearly don't.
You can have solidarity with and show your support for racial equality by not being racist.
Yeah, and that's a good start. Nobody is going to tell you not to do that. But racism still exists, and if nobody's going to tackle it, it's going to continue to exist. Someone's going to have to deal with it. Now, if you want to sit it out, that's fine, but then sit it out. Don't actively oppose the people that are trying to do something about it. The players taking the knee does nothing to you. Literally takes up a few seconds, doesn't affect you in any way. All you have to do is sit there quietly while it's going on. It's an incredibly low bar, and you can't even clear that.
Supporting BLM, or bowing to the knee, or bowing to that belief that being white gives you some inherent privilege. These are all, to many of us, repulsive and racist ideas.
Well, hang on. There's a couple of different things going on there. I thought you said that you supported Black Lives Matter. Forget about the movement, just the statement. I assume you would get behind that. And now you're saying you find it repulsive. No, of course you're not, but you're conflating it with white privilege, which is a term that you don't seem to understand. It's very offensive and repulsive to you. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, it isn't racist to point out that racism exists. And if you cannot understand that being born white in a Western country means that there are certain obstacles that you don't have to overcome, I'm not entirely sure how to help you there, because the evidence of that is everywhere. It's not hard to find out. Does that mean you've won at the game of life automatically? No, there are plenty other factors where you might not be privileged. Doesn't mean that you have no obstacles to overcome. It just means there are some that you are never going to have to deal with, because institutionally the West is set up that way.
And when you wear that slogan on your shirts, do you realise what you're actually endorsing? I'm not too sure you would if you did.
And when you boo that gesture, do you understand what you're booing? Because I'm not sure you would if you did. You see, it's very interesting, isn't it, that if I were to say to you, if you boo the England players taking the knee, that means you're racist. That would be a blanket statement, and you would say I couldn't possibly understand what your motivations were without asking you, so how do I know that you're racist by dint of the fact that you boo the players doing that? But you seem to think that you have a better idea than the players do of the reasons of why they're doing it, when they are on the public record as having told you why they're doing it. What makes you think that you know better than them? And if you do think you know better than them, then you don't get to say that we don't know better than you when we say you're racist for booing them.
Long may our country uniquely continue to enjoy fantastic race relations against groups that seek to divide her. I do strongly believe that.
That's a great country you're describing there. Out of interest, where is it? Because it clearly isn't England. This is just complete denialism. Your argument would have a lot more weight if racism didn't exist. But it does. And I'm trying not to be too mean here. Look, I've been where you are. I grew up well educated about the topic of racism, and it left me going, well, I'm not racist, and I can't understand why anyone would be racist, and I don't know anyone who is. Therefore, racism doesn't exist, or at least it's not a major problem in today's society. When you scratch the surface a bit deeper, it's still there. There is still progress that needs to be made. And it's a scary realization when you come to it. And it is easier to deny it, but at some point you're going to have to face it.
But bowing the knee to BLM? No way. I hope more fans actually start to stand up against this frankly absurd pandering to this extreme political outfit.
And again, repeating one of the fundamental misunderstandings you have of this whole topic. The players are not bowing the knee to BLM. They are making a statement that they have heard. It's not the same thing. They are not being subservient to anyone. You actually got this wrong a few times in the video, and I've only included a couple of examples. And as for standing up to them, what's that going to do? They're trying to make a point that racism exists. The more you boo them, the more you're going to prove the point. The day that players can freely stop taking the knee because they don't need to do it anymore is the day that nobody's booing them for doing so. I think the smart money is Scotland finishes bottom. We're just happy to be there. The YouTuber Stuntpeg actually made the same prediction, and anticipating all the misogynistic comments you might get, said that if Scotland don't finish fourth, she will get into the kitchen and never come out. I will make a similar prediction. If anyone wants to tell me that I'm wrong, if Scotland finish first or second in the group, we'll put aside them finishing third. If you want to put your reputation where your mouth is and say that I'm wrong about Scotland coming fourth, if they come first or second, I will get in the kitchen and I will not come out until I have made everyone a sandwich. What do you mean I didn't mention hungry and that's just disrespectful? I am hungry, it's well past lunchtime.